With the research we found that Paul has been through hardship. I want to find and dig through his memories and get the reasons why his bands failed and why he didn't continue his music career.
I've known Paul about 2.5 years now. Paul was a teacher when I started working here. So yeah, about 2.5 years.
First met Paul because we were both teaching media studies and we examined for an exam board, and he was actually my team leader. That was how I first met him, and I think that would be about 2000. I think it's about 16 years since I met Paul. Long time.
Well, when I first started working here, Paul actually told me about his music career and I was really impressed. Being quite musical myself, to know somebody who has had a record deal, has had their own music produced is absolutely fantastic. I think I was a bit in awe really of the fact of how he has had such a great music career and also the people who he's worked with. It's really cool. I was really impressed.
Yes, I know a lot about Paul's music career. I didn't know anything about it at first when we first knew one another, but when we got together as a couple, that was when he first revealed that he was a pop star, which was quite shocking and exciting. He hasn't shared a huge amount with me about his career actually, but I know about Ashley and Jackson, and I have listened to the Solid Gold CD a few times. I do find it quite amazing to think really that he's performed in front of thousands of people and gigged, you know, all over Europe and things. And he's still got a bit of that kind of pizzazz about him, I reckon.
So I really like the music that Paul created in both of his bands, but my particular favourite is the band he was in first, which is Workforce. I really like the sound and the tone of the music. I think the name and then the sound, like really heavy percussion and all that type of music that's going on behind that, along with Paul's vocals, sounds really, really good. And I think within the 80s when it was, I could think that music would be quite revolutionary. So I really, really liked his music when I listened to it.
I really like his music. He and I have got really similar tastes in music. I think it's one of the things that really joins us together, and music's very important in our lives. We still go to concerts and things together. I love soul, funk, you know, which is kind of the kind of vibe that his music had. And he's probably told you that he was a great aficionado of the Hacienda, the famous Manchester night spot. And it's a place that I had visited many years before I even knew Paul's existence. I love the music. One of the things that I find really funny about listening to him in the band is his voice to me sounds so different from his speaking voice, and it always makes me smile. But no, I love it.
Well, I'm really not sure. I'm quite nervous about the whole thing actually. It's been a long time since some of these people have communicated with me, and I know your researchers have been in touch with them. I just hope it goes well and nothing too embarrassing comes out. Well, I've been interviewed a million times, I'm not so bothered about that. I'm just bothered that the right side of the story gets told, if you know what I mean.
Hello, and today we're going to be interviewing Paul Wheatcroft. How are you today, Phil?
I'm okay.
Good to see.
A bit nervous.
Yeah, looks it.
Thank you. I think I'll walk off this show right now.
So, right, I've got a few questions to ask you, and my first for today is, how did you first become on the music scene?
Okay. God, I was 14, and I was at school, like a lot of people, with my mates, and we formed a band, but nobody wanted to be the singer, which is usually the case because everybody's so nervous. Everybody wants to be the guitar player and stand at the back. So Muggins got to be the singer, and that was the start of it.
So, like, that was when you formed the band Workforce, was it?
No, no,
Or was it later on?
that was much later.
Oh,
yeah.
was it much later?
After finishing with the band at school, I started work on my own.
Oh, right.
I was very influenced by a lot of the experimental music that was around at the time. So, as I recall, I had a large semi-acoustic 12-string guitar, an old-fashioned drum machine, and an echo box, and a black and white television. And I would stand on the stage in the light of the black and white television, much as you might have seen from those other videos, because that was very cool to have the television flicking on you.
Get the flicker of the light.
And wail some appalling kind of postmodern psychotic tune.
Oh, that was good. What was your biggest accomplishment when you were in that band, Workforce?
In Workforce, getting out of Amsterdam alive. Would that count? We played a club called the Milky Way, the Melkweg, which was the hippest club in Amsterdam. But the Dutch are quite interesting with the support acts. The support act was a stripper. So we watched the stripper, and then we had a little while before we went on. So I decided, in my infinite wisdom, to go around the streets of Amsterdam. And I took my camera with me. Do you know what happens in the streets of Amsterdam overnight time?
I can imagine several wrong things.
So there I am taking photographs of it with my camera. so this big Moroccan pimp jumps out and basically holds me up at gunpoint and says, if you don't give me a camera, that's it for you, son. In Moroccan or whatever language he was chatting in. But you see, but the thing about it is, Callum, that I just got engaged, and because we were rock and roll, we didn't exchange kind of gifts or rings as such. So I got a leather jacket for my engagement. And the guy wanted me leather jacket, and I thought I'm gonna have to die before this guy gets my leather jacket. So getting out of Amsterdam alive was one of my best accomplishments. Yeah.
How did you split up? How did the band Workforce split up?
How did the band Workforce split up? Right. Let me think. How much did we hate each other? There was a fair bit of hatred and musical differences in there. Some of it was about me wanting to do other things. I had some opportunities to, as with later in life, opportunities to have a greater level of success, sort of step out of that thing. But also, quite naturally, a couple of the band members were moving away, and it just sort of it fizzled out because things had changed, music scene had changed.
Everything just changed, so then it came to this point.
Yeah.
Right. I did some little bit of research, and I believe that you went into tried to go onto a solo career after that. Am I right? That's
right.
Yeah. How did that work out?
Well, there was a guy called Amrik Rai who wrote for the NME, and we were all mates. So with Amrik, it was like having your own kind of in-house press person. So I knew I was going to get press. So me and a guy called Mark Bryden, who was later in a band called Moloko, me and Mark recorded this single called Run. Ironically, it was the first time Steve from Ashley and Jackson ever played on anything I recorded, and they loved it at CBS, Sony now, as CBS as it was then, And to make things a little bit easier, I also had a mate who worked at CBS. He could speak Japanese, so he was one of the first people who really could manage to kind of get a decent job in the music industry. He was a drummer, but speaking Japanese when a Japanese corporation, Sony, was taking it up, so he got a very good job. And so the wheels were smooth for my single to get to the ears of the important people at the record company. And at the time there was another artist that they were looking at picking up. You probably never heard of him now, but he was very, very famous in the late 80s. He had one number one single. His name was Terence Trent D'Arby. It was like a kind of dreadlocked kind of Michael Jackson kind of guy, and we'd go and see each other because he was supporting Simply Red at the time, and we'd go to their gigs to see each other. And so I put these tracks into CBS and I didn't hear anything back, and I thought, well, that's the end of that. Then all of a sudden this song came out on the radio by Terence Trent D'Arby, and I thought, this sounds familiar. And he basically nicked my song for the song that became Sign Your Name at number one.
I seen that on the thing, and I wasn't too sure, but that was one piece of work I found about it, and I thought that was pretty wrong in my opinion.
Well, they tried to take it to court. It was us versus the corporates, and
it never works out really.
It never happened, but yes. So I have written a number one hit, but it's just no one knows.
That's good then. Right. I found out that you were talking to a person you're not really close with now, called Steve Corby. Back
Cobby,
when Cobby was it? During I think it was 88 or 89, something like that. And you were both down in a nightclub. I think it was down in I forgot where it was now. But you were in a nightclub, and he said that he met with you on that same night, and it was out of the blue because I think it was through. Wasn't it your relationship and and the sister or something knew each other or something like that? And that night?
That's not quite right. He missed out one important thing. He was a fan of Workforce.
Oh, that was it. That was it.
And basically he heard us on John Peel. And the connection was that my girlfriend worked in a clothes shop called X Clothes, which had branches in Manchester and Hull, and they became mates, and so through my girlfriend he got to know me, but we didn't meet in some mysterious club by accident. He'd been listening to my music for probably a year, maybe longer.
I believe after then you started to success and trying you were joining together to be friends, friendship back then, wouldn't you say?
Oh, he was my best mate. Certainly for a time. I mean, when I split up with the girl who I was engaged to, he was like my best mate.
nice way.
And he was really helpful and kind to me, which is kind of why I was so upset by what happened later.
I believe that after when you were when you started to get together as a band, wasn't it, Ashley and Jackson? Wasn't it the first song called The Sermon or something like
That's
that?
That's right.
And, how did you feel when you were producing and then released that song?
Well, we recorded it in a one-bedroom flat, or certainly the demo for it in a one-bedroom flat, and I had this James Brown sample, and he had a sampler. Which was a kind of old school box that enabled you to take a piece of music and then repeat it on a loop, so you created a backing track. But what hadn't happened before was that we put that James Brown Brown backing track onto a house beat, and Mike Pickering, who was a DJ at the Hacienda at the time, you might know his band M People, you may have heard of them. Mike picked it up, and we were like #1 in the dance charts, like from nothing, within a matter of like days of the record being released, and obviously then this big buzz was concerned, and then all the factory records people got involved in, started from there, really.
Wasn't that like the record what you got like offered to sign up for? Wasn't it like Big Life Records or something like that?
Yeah, but we had when you have a look at the old records, you'll see we had a label first.
Oh, right.
Our original manager, or our person who was our manager, was a guy called Dave Rofe, and he started his own label called DRM. But he was like, he sort of had the patronage of Tony Wilson, so he would in those days Factory had their offices above the Hacienda, so we would go to what was then New Orders and Mundy's offices, and Dave would have his little desk in there. It was kind of nice little sort of setup again, and so Dave had the support of Tony, and also a guy called Rob Gretton, who was New Orders manager, who died a couple of years ago. I don't know if you know. And so we had sort of influential friends, shall we say, and so then it was really through that we started to pick up a lot of the factory musicians and the musicians from that scene. But this was way before Big Life, so we had, in fact, Solid Gold was released on DRM before it was picked up by Big Life.
It was the
they remixed it.
Oh, did they remix it? Oh,
yeah.
Right. I was thinking about that. Like, actually, talking about Solid Gold, how did it mean to you when you made that song? So it's like,
well, it was the most exciting period of your career, because things, when you're doing well in the music industry, because things move fast and you're really busy, and when you're not doing very well, the phone doesn't ring. So usually around the release of anything there is a big hoo-ha. So it's funny really how these things work out. Just before I go on, Dave, when he left us, went on to manage a band called the Doves, who were very successful. And our first A&R man at Big Life, a guy called Darkest Bees, had, after us, his next artist was Amy Winehouse. And I told you backstage, didn't I, about Noel Gallagher being a roadie. So it seemed that we were kind of like the springboard for everyone else's success, but not our own.
Yeah, it's sad when you look at it, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, but good to say you did it. I mean,
went on to actually succeed in a way.
So for example, in the build-up to Solid Gold, you had we would be doing a photo shoot. So they would take us and buy us our clothes, and you would generally keep the clothes that you wore from the photo shoot, and then the same night we went and did Dance Energy, the Norm Ski TV show with Loose Ends, who were a massive British soul act at the time, and then we came back at the night time and played a gig at the International in Manchester. So within the space of a day, that was a kind of typical day you would do. But it was interesting for us because everything was done for you. So you know, we arrived at the photo shoots. Somebody had our clothes ready, somebody had the set ready. You know, we did the next thing that was all ready for us, and then we literally were chauffeured to the venue and walked on stage, and it was all set up. You know, far cry from the old days of having to set up your own gear.
Well, this is a bit where I thought it was a bit upsetting, but like, how did you feel when it split up? How did it come to that point when you split up?
That's a difficult. That was a really difficult period because by that time I was married to a different person, and I had 2 kids, and I'd become increasingly annoyed at. You see, Steve would come and stay with me because he lived in Hull. And Steve would come and stay with me, but the noise of the children crying at night got on his nerves, and he would start saying like, you know, "Can't you shut that kid up?"
He wasn't used to it.
Forget whether he was used to it or not. I was really annoyed that, you know, he decided my kids weren't good enough. So he went and stayed at Dave Roth's house then, and became one of the lads, you know, and I was quite literally left holding the baby sometimes. So I was annoyed at that. I was, but he also started to become quite starstruck by some of the people we were hanging around with, you know, and he liked to worm his way in with the Bobby Gillespies and the Sean Ryders and all of that, you know, and that wasn't cool. You didn't do that when you grew up with them, you know, and they were part of your social circle. No one like. In fact, one of the few we barely talked about music at all. To be honest, we would talk about football or something else, you know, or other artists. But he was a bit, well, in my opinion, he became quite egotistical as we got bigger, and he also became more of a kind of gold digger. And by the end, I'd had enough, to be honest. So my marriage split up, and the band split up, and I buggered off to London for 5 years.
It's sad when you look at it. Like, I would have loved to be part of the band and just, you know, kept it going, but you get moments like that, don't you, really?
Well, I haven't spoken to him since 1991.
Like, he told me that, and it's what you call, it's his own fault when you look at it, in my opinion.
Well, I think he admits that now.
He even says that it was, he was stupid, and he, like, was something he said, like, it sounded like he was sorry, and it said it wasn't my finest moments in my life, you know, what I did.
Well, that's nice. I mean, we could really have. I mean, we played, for example, Jamiroquai supported us. You know, we were playing big gigs around the country. In Spiral Carpets tour, we played with Public Enemy, Massive Attack. You know, some really good people, and we had a great reputation. But he decided that he didn't want to be commercial. So we had this. They basically bought us a recording studio, and we set the studio up in his house. And when the band split, he kept the studio. So that was another reason. They paid me off a pittance for it, but like he could continue his career in a way I couldn't. So I had to start. Fortunately, a lot of my mates had moved down to London, so I could still have a career down there. But like, the whole thing was over by that time.
On a lighter note, from then, how do you feel about your life now? Like, how has it been since then, would you say?
I really miss the company of musicians. I really miss being a musician, and I really miss the feeling of what it's like getting ready to do a gig. I miss recording. I keep thinking that maybe Jules Holland or somebody like that will kind of pull us out of retirement, but then I've got the whole problem of how do I rebuild my relationships with any of these people sufficiently enough to play a song with them. So it's sad in that respect, but you know, when you're young, you make these kind of like
decisions, don't you?
Decisions, and sometimes when you're older, you regret them. My kids thought it was extremely funny through most of their lives, and but now they don't think it's so funny anymore. They're more proud.
I tell you, it's something to be proud of that you went so far back then.
I'm proud of it.
Yeah, I would be. How are you feeling about being a teacher?
Well, teaching came about actually before the success of Ashley and Jackson. I was working for Virgin I worked for Virgin for about 5 years, and it was I was a buyer. I was black music buyer, I was reggae and soul buyer, but it didn't pay very much. And the mother of my kids at the time encouraged me to get a proper job. So I trained to be a teacher at Manchester University. Went through all my teaching, got my first job, and then the band started. And I packed in teaching because they gave us £250,000 from Big Life, and I could pay myself as a musician. And so I quit teaching to become a paid musician, and it was really funny because I would get a lift to work in the morning with this guy who was a maths teacher, and I'd say, "Can we stop at the paper shop and get the NME?" And it'd be full of stories about me, and I'd be showing him like these interviews and these charts and things on the way to work, going and doing a day's work, and then thinking, "This is wrong." So it was. But the hardest thing probably was going back in when it finished. But I'd like to think that, you know, the students who do know about this probably understand my personality a bit better, and the students who don't maybe understand why I do things in the way I do a little bit better, and why I'm so anxious for them to have real experiences.
Well, they were all my questions I had. How are you feeling anyway? Like, what the questions?
I'm feeling like I want to get off the stage and go back to obscurity, but we'll see.
Right, that's all for today. Right, thank you very much. Through the show we did today, I feel like I got Paul's opinions about his band and how his time was previously, and his emotions about it and how he feels about it. And this is what I wanted about this interview, and I'm proud of that, and I feel like this is a great achievement.
Yes, because I think the story needed to be told. However, you know, I guess it's always difficult dredging up the past, isn't it? Everybody's changed, and you do things when you're younger that you think maybe, well, you know, that was a bit impetuous, like cutting somebody off for 25 years. It's a bit impetuous, I suppose, but what's done's done, really. It did make me miss being in a band, though. Maybe Jules Holland will come in for us and there'll be a dramatic reunion or something like that. Well, I'm just looking at the social media feeds here, and yeah, it seems pretty positive. Quite surprised actually at the amount of people that still follow the band, and also the amount of positive feedback we've been given. So yeah, I feel pretty happy about that.